What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward, talk about other factors involving the markets, what you should be watching for as time goes on. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total. Not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon, in just about 2 weeks from now. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So, as far as the market is going, the first thing you have to remember is that right now, SPY has this range. It's stuck in a range going back and forth between supply and demand. Now, if we get a break in this range in either direction, that will determine a much bigger move. But so far, SPY has been spending more time in the lower end of this range for the last couple of days. So that's why I want to talk about some big levels to watch for over the next couple of minutes. I'll talk about why on earth it is possible that if we do get some kind of break in this range, we'll be looking for a very, very big move to possibly the downside if we lose this key support. Now, it's not a guarantee until we see something happen. I'm going to talk about what that thing is in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's talk about the status. So just know that tomorrow is going to be Monday, December 16th, 2024. 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the S&P Global Composites Manufacturing and Services PMI reports. This may cause some more volatility, giving us more insights on how the sectors are looking. So look for a big move at 9:45 a.m. Besides that, at 11:30 a.m., we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions that could cause more volatility. And then there's not anything else that's coming out that's too significant. For earnings, just know there's nothing too crazy, at least for the week. We do have a couple of retail, such as like Nike. We have BlackBerry, FedEx, and a few more by Thursday. But besides that, everything else is going to be quite minor. Once again, there's nothing too crazy for earnings. And then lastly, for the fear and greed index, right now, neutral is what's making up the majority of sentiment. There's nothing that's too crazy that's going on. Momentum is very, excuse me, it's more in favor of greed, excuse me, guys, right now, because momentum has been slowing down a little bit for the last couple of days. The market's been on a slight little downtrend for just a couple of days, and we'll have to see if that continues. That's when the market used to be at extreme greed, and now it's just at greed. This is just based off position, how far we're away from like the 125 daily moving average. So far, we're still greedy, we're still holding up, but there's less strength than before. And then we also happen to have the puts and call option ratio, which is going up just slightly. We're no longer at extreme greed, we're just at greed. This shows that there's been a little bit more put buying going on over the last 5 days. So there are some more shorts starting to pile in, but it's not that extreme. We're not at like the 0.8 ratio or anything like that. It's not that extreme. For now, there are still a lot of buyers who are present, and we're not seeing that much put buying. It's just going up just a little bit. Now, the VIX is still neutral. It's still stuck in the middle. It's not extremely fearful. It's not too greedy. It's stuck in the middle for now. So we're going to give this more time to develop. This is kind of neutral, so it could go either way depending on some factors. But that brings me to what this big thing is on SPY. So SPY has this support zone around that 602 to 603 area. As we tend to hit this lower end right here, we tend to get bought back up. And there's three examples. Like right here, we bounced after hitting that 602 area. We bounced off 602, then we bounced off 603 right here. However, as we get very close to the 608s, okay, we hit 608 over here and we rejected. We hit the 608, 609 right here, rejected, 608 rejected, 607.5-ish, and then we rejected. So as we get very close to 608, we tend to reject. Now, we've been on the lower end for quite some time. We actually closed very close to our 50 EMA right here. But the issue with SPY is that we had a high at 609. We came down, made a lower high, then we came down and made another lower high. So there's some weakness that's starting to build on the charts, especially when you look at the daily time frame. You will see that the PPO is turning a little bit negative here, and that does typically signify there might be a little bit more downside coming. Now, in this case, just know that if SPY bounces off 603 and we start pushing from here, we're looking for 605.16 as our resistance. If that breaks, we're going to go back up to this high resistance balances around 607. Now, if we lose the 602 to 603 area, SPY is at risk of dumping to 600. Then 598 is going to be my next target, very close to the support right here. So I'll be watching those levels very closely. What tends to happen in the mornings to SPY is this. Notice that we had this morning where SPY gapped up and it rejected. The next morning, we opened, we pushed a little bit, then we rejected only to bounce. The next morning, we pushed upon the morning, then we start to dip. The next morning, we were kind of slow. And then this morning right here, we pushed up on Friday only to reject. So we have a very interesting pattern for the last couple of days where we like to push, then by the end of the day, we slow down. This makes me suspect the possibility that SPY might do the same thing where we try to push towards the 605 area in the morning, but then we might reject there. There might be a little rejection there because we're making lower highs right here. So because we're making these lower highs like this, there's a possibility that this could be like our next resistance zone to watch for. And if we do see some kind of rebound, this might kind of like rebound like this, either to like the 50 EMA, the 20 EMA, excuse me, and then maybe to this trend line somewhere like that between 605 to 606, and then it might be coming back down like this. That's the most likely case I'm looking for SPY, a move just like that for tomorrow. But just to be safe, make sure you watch your levels. So we might rebound in the morning and then get a rejection. If we reject and come back down to 602, we have to hold that. Otherwise, we start dumping even more. So just keep that in mind. That's the most likely possibility for tomorrow. Another reason why I say that is because of ES. Now, ES is at this support zone, which happens to be around this 60-40 to 60-50 area. We love to bounce off that area. We bounced many times off of this, and simultaneously we're just making lower highs. But a high here came down, and a lower high came down, and a lower high came down. So it might attempt to rebound towards 60-60 or so near our 50 EMA. But if we do try to come back up there, we could reject and continue to fall back down to 60-40. If 60-40 fails us, there's going to be a risk of us coming back down to 60-20, then eventually 6,000. So just know there is that risk of downside. Now, look at the last few days. We pumped and rejected, pumped and rejected, pumped and rejected. So this might attempt to rebound for about 60-60 tomorrow. But if we get some kind of rejection there, it could be coming back down to about 60-40, if not 60-20 if that fails us. So our rebound and rejection is the most likely case looking at this chart because it's still looking a little bit weaker. Nvda, it has the same thing essentially. So we have a tendency of kind of like pushing and rejecting, pushing and rejecting. And then we have a channel that's stuck right here. So if you look at this, it's very simple, okay? We love to get bought back up around 132. 132 is where Nvidia has a strong support, and we tend to reject over here as we get to the higher 140s. Now, if you look at the last couple of days, we had a high here since earnings. We came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high, came down. So what tends to happen during a setup like this, especially when you have this support here, is you rebound a bit, and then you continue down to the main support around 132. So that's what Nvidia might be doing. We might not be done with the downside yet, and we'll have to see if we bounce off 132. So it might attempt to rebound to about 135 to 136, then come back down to 132. And we'll have to see if we bounce off that or not. Otherwise, there's going to be a risk of more downside. So that's the most likely case. I'm looking for a little rebound and a rejection, and 132 could be retested. We have to hold that. Otherwise, we're at risk of dumping to 130, then the 128 area. So please keep that in mind. For Bitcoin, we are looking more bullish, but the problem with Bitcoin is that there's a tough resistance near the closer we get to essentially 103,800, we do tend to reject. So I think we might be testing that for a little bit more upside, but then watch and see if we reject off that or not. Otherwise, 103,800 to about 105,000 is going to be a tough resistance, and we could be looking for a rejection around that range. For other factors out there, we also happen to have Tesla, and I'll talk about the QQQ right after this. Tesla's very strong, very resilient compared to the market. It's continuing to just break out, making higher highs and higher lows. Every time it dips, it just keeps on getting bought back up, and we have to lose 412.44 to turn bearish. Otherwise, this thing remains bullish. That's how crazy strong this thing is, because we're still hovering above our 20 EMA very nicely. So what tends to happen is we might pop a bit close to 440, then come back down. I would love to see a retest of about 430. This is where the breakout happened to be. And then once we bounce off this support at 430, we could continue to go up for 450 plus. So a drop back down to support, then a breakout to 450 plus is the most likely case, as long as we don't lose our major support. If we do end up failing at 430, though, there's going to be a risk of us coming back down towards like 415 or so, 420, then 415. So we'll see if we bounce off that, but look for a pop and a drop, a retest of 440, then a rejection back down to where the breakout is. So right there. And then we'll have to see if we come back down to that support, right? If we bounce off 430 or not. So I think we might pop and get a rejection back down to 430. Could go a little bit lower. We'll see about that. But then we could try to bounce and continue this uptrend. So I do see a lot of potential in this nonetheless. For NQ, we are doing a good job so far, so we could be looking for a dip on NQ. We might be retesting 21,692, and we'll have to see if we rebound or not. So I think that this could dip a little bit more. Looking at this setup on NQ, I do see a test of 21,692 that's coming, but then we'll have to see if it bounces, because so far we're holding our 20 EMA. We have to lose that to turn back down even lower. As of right now, we're bouncing off of this, so it is technically bullish, but there might be a small dip coming at least to start things off. Same thing with the QQQ. The QQQ loves to hold above its 20 EMA. I could see it's come down closer to its 20 EMA at 526, but then we'll have to see if we bounce off that because so far we're holding support very, very nicely. And there's a good chance it might just attempt to rebound off of that. So in my opinion, there's a nice uptrend on the QQQ, but because of the fact that we had a high here and we came down, we were kind of like struggling there. It might come down just a little bit to about 526.5 before it tries to bounce. That's the most likely case. But if 526.5 fails us, then this will be dumping lower to like 520.91. That's very close to where this imbalance happens to be. So watch and see if we hold this support. I think we might be testing this 20 EMA before it tries to bounce. But overall, we're doing a good job so far. For Apple, Apple is looking decent. We're just consolidating right now between this 250 and about 246 area. We might retest 246. We'll have to see if we reject or not. If we get some kind of rejection, we could be dipping back down towards 244. So just keep that in mind. Overall, we have a head and shoulders like structure. So give this some time to develop, and then we'll see what happens after that. For Netflix, Netflix has a bearish divergence that is developing right here, but there is one issue. So we have 921.5 as our resistance. If we break that, we could continue to push. If not, we could be dipping back down to about 907.68. So we'll have to see about that. What I think might happen to Netflix is this might be attempting to make a lower high here. So you can actually take this, your fib retracement chart like this. Whoops, sorry about guys. I'm not looking at that. I think I clicked on the wrong thing. But this is my fib retracement chart right here. If you look at this, we might attempt to get back up towards this chop zone right here to the 0.5 area for like a test of about 925. If we make a lower high there, we could be on our way lower towards this 907 area after that. So there might be a little attempt to rebound before it likely comes down a little bit lower. So please keep that in mind. MicroStrategy looks a little bit more bullish. We're holding support very well. I think this might attempt to get back up towards these highs around the 420 area. So it looks quite good. As long as you don't lose 396, I favor 420. If that breaks, 430 is coming. Looks more bullish to me, at least nonetheless. For Celsius or CELH, I think we look more bullish as we're making higher highs and higher lows. As long as we don't lose 30.84 and 29.84, we are favoring upside. So it's looking quite good. This could attempt to push higher for essentially the 33 area. So I think it's looking pretty good right here. This looks like a nice accumulation structure, and I think we look quite good. So 33 might be where our target happens to be because we're riding above our key EMAs very nicely. So as long as 29.8 does not break, we're favoring upside for 33 plus. For Supermicro, I think we're looking pretty decent. Now, we're on a bit of a downtrend right now, and there's a very, very nice setup here where this imbalances. This typically suggests that there could be a little bit more downside coming. But there is a nice support around this 30, 32-ish area. And then there's also support around this 29 to 30 area. So I think it might dip a little bit more and make its way closer to the lower 30s before it attempts to rebound. But the most likely case is that we dip a little bit lower towards 30, and we'll have to see how it goes from there. So look for a little bit more downside towards this 31.8 to 30 area, and we'll see if we bounce off that or not. Then we'll see how things end up going. For Palantir, we look more bullish. I think we're doing a good job at holding up on the 4-hour time frame. We could be pushing closer to about this 78 to 80 area. It looks very, very strong so long as 73.4 does not break. I think that Palantir looks strong. And I think that 78 to 80 is going to be a nice target. It looks bullish. It's forming a nice accumulation with an inverse head and shoulders. This may continue to slowly increase. It could even try to fill this entire imbalance here, so that could be very strong. Looks pretty good in my personal opinion. Rivian's looking decent. It's trying to turn on the 4-hour. As long as we do not lose 13.87, we favor upside. And I think this might be on its way up closer to 15. There might be more upside coming for an accumulation. It might slowly push for 15. I think that's the most likely case. For SoFi, I think that we look more bullish. I think that we're getting a breakout right here from this channel. We were talking about this last week. But what I would like to see is a little dip here to retest this and then break out. I'm not sure if we'll get the dip, but overall it does look a little bit more bullish to me. So look for a test of 15.9. Hopefully we don't get brought we don't get brought back into this channel. I would like to see a small dip here, then a bounce, and then that could continue to break out for this like these higher levels like 16.8 and above. But if we lose 15.9, then we could return into this channel and continue. So we'll have to see if we bounce off that. So I anticipate a small dip, then a bounce is the most likely case. That's what typically happens during these breakouts. But just to be safe, we'll have to wait and see. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're looking a little bit more bearish. I think we might be testing 231 or so to 230 as the most likely possibility. Then we'll see if we bounce off that or not. So look for a little bit more downside as the most likely case. For AMD, we look a little bit weaker. We're on a bit of a downtrend here. We need to try to reclaim 128 and then 130.93. Otherwise, we favor more downside for essentially 125 flat. So I think that there's a good chance we continue to downtrend, and we could be on our way back down towards There might be a rebound for 128 and a rejection to 125 is the most likely cases. For ARM, we could be dipping a little bit lower for 150. If that fails us, we could be on our way down towards 147.5, and we'll see if we bounce or not. So look for 150, then 147.5, and we'll have to see if we get some kind of rebound off those levels. For Coinbase has a little rejection like structure that's developing here. The setup typically favors downside. So it needs to get bought back up around 314.5. Otherwise, it's favoring a move back down to 305. And eventually the gap fill for 302. So I'm thinking it might dip a little bit. Looks a little bit weaker in terms of the setup, and that could lead to some downside, especially if Bitcoin does get some kind of rejection soon. Now, Amazon's barely holding 226.75. If that fails us, I could see this imbalance fill for 225, and then we'll see what kind of reaction we get. But just keep that in mind. There's a slight divergence right here, and this could be dipping a little bit lower for 225. For Meta has a slight divergence as well. It could be dipping a little bit lower. We need to reclaim some very, very key support around the 625 area. Otherwise, there's going to be a risk of this slowly making its way down towards 609. So I think it might attempt to rebound towards that like 625 area. But if we get a rejection, we can't hold above 622. If we like push above it then reject, there's going to be a risk of slowly getting down closer towards that 610 area. So I think that's the most likely case for Meta, a little pop in a rejection. Then we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get from there. For Microsoft, in my opinion, looks a little bit weaker. We have a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder forming here. If we lose 446, we're looking for a move back down towards this 443 area. That's where this imbalance happens to be. So with this head and shoulders like structure, we could pop a bit. But if we lose 446, we're looking for 443 as our target. That looks a little bit more probable because of the weakness that's here, especially as we're making lower highs here. So it makes me think that this might retest like 448 and then continue to dip. And if 446 holds, or if it fails, excuse me, we're looking down for 443 as our target. For Google, we look a little bit weaker. We're continuing to downtrend right here. We're getting very close towards our 20 EMA around 189. So I presume what's going to happen is Google might be dipping a little bit more. It might continue this downtrend closer to about this 189 area. And because some big tech stocks look a little bit weaker, I think that this is what could drag the QQQ down just a bit. However, there's no guarantee it's going to last forever. This could just be a temporary move. So please keep that in mind. There's no guarantee this is going to last for like the next 2 weeks or anything like that. It could just be for a day or two where the market sees a little dip as a lot of these tech stocks are showing some weakness. So we'll see about that. For those who are interested in GameStop, this could dip a little bit more towards the next imbalance, taking us down towards 27.27. But otherwise, we're just completely range bound. AMC has the same thing that's going on. It's on a bit of a downtrend. We could get very close to 4 flat before it attempts to rebound, but I do see a risk of downside closer to about 4 flat. For DJT looks a little decent. We're at some tough resistance right here around this. It's very close to the 37 area, so I think we might be retesting 35.72 and then 34.36 as our supports. So look for a small dip for 35.72, and we'll see if we bounce or not. Otherwise, there's going to be a risk of downside. The VIX is looking decent. It's completely indecisive right now. Don't forget, later on during the week, we have FOMC on Wednesday, so we'll see how that affects us. We have a gap to fill down here around 13.06. We have this resistance around the 14 area, so we're stuck in the middle. We could be coming down to fill that gap, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get, so give it some time to develop. The 10-year Treasury yield looks a little bit more bullish. This could continue to break out right here towards this 4.4 area, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get as we're stuck in the middle. So give that some more time. And last but not least, we have the dollar index, which could be dipping towards 106.79 or so, if not 106.54. I think there's a risk of this dipping lower towards this 106.79 zone, and that is, if it does dip lower, this could be favoring the market rebounding in the morning. But then here's the thing about the dollar. This is like a bullish divergence. We have a double bottom that formed for the shorter term. So what could be happening to dollar is something like this, where we dip like this to the support, then we start continuing to break out. And if it starts to move like this could signify that the market has some downside coming. So we'll see about that. But I want to just say there is a risk of the market dipping lower. Looking at the setup on SPY, we haven't lost key support for confirmation to officially start a bigger dump. It's just a small dip that could be coming. So watch and see if 602 ends up holding as the week progresses. Now, there could be a small rebound tomorrow morning in the whole market, which is what typically happens when we open, especially as more volume comes back in. But the problem is we might not break past this resistance because we are making lower highs here. So it makes me suspect the possibility of us kind of rejecting early on and making a move back down and retesting 602. Once again, if that fails, SPY is going to be at risk of dumping a lot more, so please keep that level in mind. Until I see you guys again tomorrow, I thank you all so much for listening, so please have a good rest of your day. Thank you all so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy some football or whatever life has to offer. And I'll be back tomorrow to talk about what's happening with the PMI reports and also other pieces of data like that. Until then, have a good night, guys. Thank you for listening. I wish you all the best and peace out.